The museum opened in 1998 and hosts the collection of Eric and Salome Estorick. The main part of the collection is the nucleus of futurist works, which holds pictures from Boccioni to Sironi, Morandi, De Chirico, Modigliani. And from time to time we bring new artists or artists that are not well known to the British public. And Luigi Pericle is perfect because he had a quite important following and he was famous in Britain in the 1960s.
Luigi Pericle first visited London in 1954. The first visit was almost certainly to do with his contacts with Punch and his work as a cartoonist. The second visit was off the back of the friendship, the partnership he had developed with a young man, Martin Summers, who had got to know him in Ascona in 1961 in the summer. And Pericle came over in preparation for his first exhibition at Arthur Tooth & Sons, the gallery that would show him several times in the early 1960s. The exhibition that Hans Hess organised in 1965 travelled to 6 galleries across the UK. Herbert Reed came across Pericle after the first exhibition. Reed was in Eranos, which is Eranos Foundation, for a conference of alternative thought. Reed went to visit Pericle in his studio in Ascona. Herbert Reed was a hugely influential critic, curator, really tastemaker and thought leader in the 1950s and 60s in terms of judging which art was the art to be prioritized at the time. But Reed had huge esoteric interests and knowledge. When he saw Pericle's paintings, he wrote about the spiritually informed nature of these paintings, that Pericle was able to see something beyond the everyday. Pericle was compared and contrasted to some of the greatest painters of his time. He was shown alongside Picasso, Frank Stella, Asger Jorn. So it's very much the case that people were trying to think of him alongside these great names.
Luigi Pericle is an artist who belongs to a large family of spiritual artists. Posthumousness is when an artist would have the talent, would have the ability to achieve success, fame, recognition, but somehow doesn't want to have that. At some point, Pericle was having quite a lot of success, so he was exhibiting in important galleries. So at some point he said, I don't want to be part of this art system, of this art world. Money is not the most important thing, is not what I am after. So he said, no, from now on, I'm going to do this in my own way. So basically he decided to be at home and to work on his paintings by himself.
He arrived before my family in this house in Ascona up on the hill of Monte Verità, and he was the neighbor, but not the guy that you see every day, because he spent a very secluded life, like in a retreat. We wanted to buy the house because it is near my hotel, but we have no clue about the content of the house. We was completely amazed and surprised by finding this painting of Luigi Pericle inside. And in the library we find the book of Hans-Joachim Müller, and was a catalogue of Peter G. Steckening collection with Manet, Monet, Gauguin, Pissarro. Everybody was there, and Luigi Pericle too. So we were astonished. I called my wife, listen, we have an history, we have something very, very peculiar. It must be discovered. Then I continued searching in the house, and I found the correspondence with the exposition in London at Tooth Gallery. Nobody knew him anymore because he stayed 50 years without exposing, without selling. So we were in front of a rediscovery of somebody that was considered in the 60s a star. It changed my life the first time because he said to me to study philosophy and Buddhism and Zen and so on. So the first time was a spiritual direction that he made me take. And the second time when I discovered the content of the house, now my responsibility is to let the world discover the work of Luigi Pericle. You can watch the painting on the internet, on a catalog, of course, but it's not the same. When you're there in person, you really feel, you really have the experience.
It is certainly not a coincidence that Pericle settled at Monte Verità and started his reclusive life and lived like a sort of magic hermit. This unique cultural environment became at the beginning of 20th century a fundamental reference for philosophers, poets and psychologists. In the case of Luigi Pericle, we can use the term alchemist in the modern sense of the word by looking at the unique way he could combine his attitude towards life and his work. On one hand, I'm highly interested in Pericle as a scholar. I'm fascinated by his books, by the way he was cultivating his discipline, by learning ancient languages, by organizing and arranging his notebooks. I'm fascinated by his method towards learning, and on the other hand, I'm fascinated by his figure linked to witchcraft and wisdom. He possessed magic skills which he combined perfectly with grace and balance, with his more intellectual attitude towards life as a knowledge of the outer world and of the inner dimension of every single person.
Seems to be trying to create a mystery in his pictures, so you don't see anything clearly. He does a sort of technical trick. When you see them reproduced in catalogues and online, you think that these are very densely textured works, but when you see them, the surface is like a membrane, or they're almost like watercolours. There is no texture at all. Conservators have been slightly baffled by how he achieved these sort of seamless surfaces and have wondered, whether he used spatulas, knives, rags to manipulate the paint. Pericle wants people to spend time with his works, and he doesn't want them to just immediately understand them. And this is in line with spiritual processes. With mysticism, you have a structured ascent to either the Godhead or the spiritual entity that you worship. There's no clear route into his paintings, but he wants a sort of gradual process of unravelling.
When we entered the house, this painting was hanging on the wall, and we wrote in a letter of Luigi Pericle that he was used to let the last painted work hanging there. So we suppose this was the last painting that he did. There is no date, no signature, no title. In the end of his period, he was really transposing his spiritual energy like a medium to the artwork. That's why there is no signature and nothing.
And of course, this blinding, icy, unusual landscape with the introduction of geometrical forms gives a totally different impression. It's very unusual. Kandinsky, on the spiritual in art, described the color white as, "It is not a dead silence, but one full of possibilities. It is the nothingness that exists before the beginning and before birth." Perhaps the earth sounded like this in the white period of Ice Age.
In his conception of art is sacred, and Luigi Pericle is like a monk, transferring spiritual energy to his painting.